So as we think about the Yellowstone trip, I thought I'd just give you a little bit of an idea of what to expect. Normally in the classroom I have several weeks to prepare students before we go on the trip, but since I don't have that luxury with you guys, I'm doing it this way, so I hope you enjoy this presentation. So, as you know, we're heading towards Yellowstone Park. Hopefully most of you have been there before, but if you haven't, that's fine. We're actually going to drive from Bozeman down to West Yellowstone. On this map, it happens to be right here. And then we're going to go along this road, and about halfway between West Yellowstone and this spot over here, which is Madison Junction, we're going to stop and do a forest fire regrowth study. In 1988, there were a number of fires in the park, and we're going to stop there and do a bit of a study, which is kind of cool. Then we're going to head down towards Old Faithful, which is right in through here, where we're going to spend part of the afternoon the first day, and we're going to take a look at the hot springs and some of the geysers that are there. You're going to have an opportunity to do an activity with Old Faithful. Then we're going to wander on down this road and end up over here at a place called Grant Village, where we're going to camp in the campground over there. And then the second day, we're going to spend some time around the lake right here. And then the third day, we're going to drive this road along the lake, and then we're going to head up towards Canyon, cut across over, and spend part of the morning over in a place called Norris Geyser Basin right there. And then on the way home, we're going to stop at a place called Lemonade Springs, which is up north, and then we'll go out through Mammoth and Gardner and head back to Bozeman through Livingston. So, as I mentioned, in 1988, 23 years ago, were the large fires in Yellowstone Park. Yellowstone itself is about 2 million acres in size, and that includes the surrounding area, what that we call the Greater Yellowstone area or region, and about 1 million acres were affected by the fires. That doesn't mean that all 1 million acres burned completely to the ground. There were cases where the fire just went across and burned the grasses at the bottom of the forest. Sometimes it only ran across the top of the forest, called a crown fire. But overall, about half of the acreage of Yellowstone Park was affected. At the time, people were really concerned that Yellowstone had completely burned up. Well, as we know now, 23 years later, that really wasn't the case. And so we're going to go into an area that was burned pretty heavily, and we'll be able to see what that regrowth has looked like over the last 23 years. And when we first, after the fires first left, this is actually what it looked like. And things were pretty burned to the ground, but you can see even in this picture, there are small trees beginning to grow back, and we're going to measure the heights of those trees. We're going to measure the grasses and get an idea of what the forest has done in the 23 years since the 1988 fires. And part of the reason for doing that is because in your lifetimes there will be more forest fires in this area. And if you take a look even from here down towards West Yellowstone as we're driving down, you may have noticed lots of dead trees. Eventually we're not going to be in a weather pattern that's been as cool as we've had this summer, and things will get hotter, lightning strikes will occur, and more than likely the forests around here will burn again. So it'd be helpful for you to understand that that's part of nature's process, and just get an appreciation for what happens after fires burn out and how things are able to come back. As I mentioned, we'll spend some time at Old Faithful that first afternoon. And one of the things I'll have you do is actually predict when Old Faithful is going to go off. And we'll do an activity in class to get you ready for that. And you will actually have created a mathematical model so that you'll be able to figure out how you can predict Old Faithful's next eruption. We'll also take a look at hot springs and geysers in that area. And on the previous page, when you saw Old Faithful, obviously that's a geyser. The upper picture on the left-hand side, that happens to be Grand Prismatic Spring, which is a very, very large hot spring at Midway Geyser Basin. And then in the bottom right picture, those are fumaroles, which are steam vents. And we'll be able to see all three of those hydrothermal or geothermal features at Old Faithful. Then we'll, as I mentioned, go over to Grant Village, where we will be camping. We will be in tents, and there'll be an adult in every tent with you kids. And it's a group campsite, and it's we'll do all the cooking there, and all of our supplies and materials, things will be there. And we'll talk a little bit more about what the expectations and requirements are in the campground once we're there. Then we'll, on Tuesday, spend some time at lake. We're going to do some lake ecology. We're going to take a look at the water in the lake and some of the features that are actually under the surface. We won't be able to go down there, unfortunately, but we'll find out that they have research scientists have sent submersible submarines down, and they've been able to map what the bottom of the lake looks like. And there's actually hydrothermal features in the bottom of the lake, and there's some pretty interesting stuff. One of the things that we'll also be focusing on are the microorganisms that actually live in the hot spring water, and that's true in the lake as well. So the colors that you see in this spring up here are actually viruses and bacteria that grow in that hot extreme water, and they're called extremophiles because they live in extreme conditions, and we'll be studying those both in the park and also when we get back to the classroom. Obviously, we'll be able to see some of the wildlife that's there. We'll probably hear some elk bugling. We'll be able to see bison more than likely. More than also likely, we probably will not see any bears, but it's possible to see either grizzly bears or black bears. Though we might also be able to see some wolves. Again, probably not as likely, but you never know. And then there's lots of other smaller mammals that are running around, like this happens to be a yellow-bellied marmot. There's ground squirrels and other critters. We'll also be seeing quite a few birds, so that'll be part of the fun, part of the adventure while we're down there. Obviously, the intent of the trip is to have a good time, to learn about what's going on in the park. There's lots of different things to learn, but our focus again will be more on some of that life at the extreme conditions and also focusing around the lake ecology. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of background of what's going to happen and it piques your interest, and I'm really looking forward to the trip with you guys. Thanks.